of the attack on America.
Now on WCCO News, the worst terrorist attack in our nation's history. Symbols of American life, the World Trade Center and the Pentagon hit. Hijacked planes crash into these buildings. Now all air travel is grounded. It's 6 o'clock and the news starts now. Twin Towers targeted by 2 hijacked airliners.
Make no mistake, the United States will hunt down and punish those responsible for these cowardly acts.
A blast at the Pentagon and bristling security at federal installations across the world. It was an attack on America. This is WCCO 4 News. Hello, I'm Amelia Santinello.
And I'm Don Shelby.
Events are unfolding quickly. Here's the latest video coming into our newsroom. First to Kabul, the capital of Afghanistan.
What we're seeing and exactly what we're hearing, certainly the sound, what appears to be the sound of large missiles incoming and landing in the city.
It's not clear who is doing the firing. CNN says that this is shelling that happens regularly in that city. The White House denies any responsibility in the firing. Afghanistan is where Osama bin Laden is being sheltered. Several government sources believe he is the prime suspect who masterminded today's terrorism.
An unbelievable day.
An unbelievable day that's been described as another Pearl Harbor. We saw a string of terror involving 4 hijacked airliners. It started around 8:45 in Manhattan with an American Airlines plane crashing into one of the World Trade Center Twin Towers, leaving a big hole, exploding, fire. Then just 18 minutes later, caught on videotape, you see a United Airlines hijacked jet hitting the other Twin Tower. You can see flames coming out the other side of the building. Nearly 50,000 people worked inside of those towers. People covered in soot scramble to take cover as both towers begin to crumble, collapse to the ground. 40 minutes later, outside of Washington, D.C., another plane strikes at the near side of the Pentagon office building, the nerve center of the nation's military. Thousands are evacuated. The death and injury toll at the Pentagon is not known. Then about a half an hour later in Pennsylvania, a United Airlines plane crashes. It went down about 80 miles southeast of Pittsburgh. Senior FBI sources say there is no doubt all 4 planes were hijacked. And the people in New York watched in horror as the planes plowed into the World Trade Center. Several TV cameras captured the crashes. This is the best video we've seen so far of one of the planes flying through the Twin Towers. Hundreds of people were aboard those jets.
The World Trade Center towers were so prominent on the New York City skyline. After this morning's blast, the buildings continue to burn and crumble. Building 7 of the World Trade Center collapsed late this afternoon. The 47-story building burned all day after the taller Twin Towers were hit. Hours after those attacks, smoke still covers the skyline and rubble continues to fall. Here are the cities those 4 planes were coming from and going to. One American Airlines jet was en route from Boston to L.A. Another American Airlines jet was going from Dulles to Los Angeles. One United Airlines plane was en route from Newark to San Francisco. And the other United plane that crashed was en route from Boston to L.A. And the Federal Aviation Administration then shut down all aircraft takeoffs across the nation. So right now, there are tens of thousands of travelers still stranded at the Twin Cities International Airport. That's where our team coverage begins with Bill Hudson. Bill, are any planes flying out of there yet?
Amelia, plain and simple, it is frightening just how silent it is out here. It's almost an eerie silence because all airline operations, of course, were ceased this morning shortly after the attacks. We're told now not to expect airline service to resume until tomorrow morning at the very earliest, if then. Meantime, disrupted travelers certainly understand why. No sooner had the day started for countless air passengers when it was cast into utter chaos.
We were told that we were landing here in Minneapolis, St. Paul.
But for what reason?
An emergency.
Airspace over Twin Cities International became eerie and quiet as our nation's planes were ordered out of the sky.
We've heard speculation as to what may have happened, rumors, innuendos. It's tragic.
Deplaning passengers stared in horror and disbelief at television monitors near their gates.
It's just shameful to see this happen, to us in this great country.
Passengers aboard 3 Korean Airlines jets will spend an unscheduled night here. One of the planes was turned away just short of landing in New York.
We had really approached the New York at the JFK airport, but suddenly the train, returned.
Top of New York.
One man was on an emergency return flight from China to tend to an ailing wife, kept away at the time he's needed most.
And she had to have the operation done right immediately, but I couldn't be in New York today. Getting me crazy right now.
But through the frantic phone calls and rebooking of rooms and flights, passengers like Tim Frank can't imagine the terror, devastation, and pain felt by so many others.
Anybody who would get upset at waiting in line for a bag or waiting for customs or finding a flight out, people who would get upset in a situation like this need to reevaluate their priorities.
Yeah, and we've heard no complaining on the part of passengers out here. Now, because today's hijackings and terrorist attacks were the result of a breakdown in security at airports elsewhere, you can expect an unprecedented tightening of security at airports nationwide. Tomorrow, we are told to expect some of those changes here at Twin Cities International. They may include only ticketed passengers passing through those doors. Reporting live at Twin Cities International, I'm Bill Hudson.
Governor Jesse Ventura compares today's attack, as so many have so far today, to the bombing of Pearl Harbor, maybe much worse. He is lining up with other leaders vowing to help keep America safe, but he says the best way for Minnesotans to stay safe is to stay calm. Pat Kessler picks up our team coverage live in St. Paul.
Don, I'm coming to you from the Emergency Operations Center, activated by the Public Safety Commissioner just moments after news of the terrorist attack was learned here in Minnesota, even though they said, and including the Commissioner, Charlie Weaver, says there is no credible evidence of any trouble here in Minnesota. During the last hour, Governor Jesse Ventura talked to reporters, calling this incident the most stunning event of our lifetime.
To President Bush, I pledge support and complete confidence from the state of Minnesota and any support that we can offer. To the people of America who are hurt and have lost loved ones and family, Terry and I offer our most sincere condolences. On behalf of the people of Minnesota, I offer our prayers. And be assured that the United States of America will overcome this day.
Now, despite the terrible events of this day, the governor wanted everything to remain open as a symbol of Minnesota's resolve. For state government offices and employees, it was business as usual. Although the state's most visible landmark remained open, a security lockdown went into effect and visitors were checked. Governor Jesse Ventura compared the attack to an act of war.
What's happened today, I would equate it very much to Pearl Harbor. We've taken huge casualties and an extremely vicious, cowardly attack, but we are the United States of America. In some ways, maybe this one's worse, because at least in the Pearl Harbor situation, you knew who the enemy was.
For state government, it was business as usual. Minnesota highways remained open. State workers reported for duty. The National Guard was placed on alert, but it was not activated. State leaders opened an emergency command post, just in case.
There is absolutely no hint of any target in Minnesota.
Be awake, be aware, use all your senses, pay attention to what's going on around you.
Now, here at the Emergency Operations Center, this will be open around the clock for at least 48 hours until they know for sure that there is no trouble here in Minnesota. Staffing this Emergency Operations Center, the Red Cross, the State Patrol, the BCA, FBI, and sheriffs, and even more. There, however, is no credible threats here in Minnesota, and they've reported the state offices will remain restricted access until further notice. Reporting live from St. Paul, I'm Pat Kessler.
Today is one of those days that will remain in our collective memory. A day where we will all remember where we were, who we were with. Our team coverage continues with Kevin Berger, who talked with people today as these unforgettable memories were forming. Kevin?
It was a day when a lot of Minnesota simply shut down. As you've heard, operations at the airport and at the federal buildings ceased, and shopping malls, including the Mall of America, Ridgedale, Southdale, the Maplewood Mall, and others closed. So did River Center and the World Trade Center in St. Paul. A lot of Minnesotans stayed close to home to watch these events unfold, but some gathered in their favorite haunts. People seem to want to be near a TV and to be near to each other as they watch the horrific day unfold. At this Bryn Mawr coffee shop, some watched in anger.
I hope they catch the people, and I hope they're just brutally annihilated, because there is no justice for something like this.
Some watched in sorrow.
I'm more sad for the people that are left behind, you know, and it's just so horrible what they're going to go through. Nightmares, like what did my mom or my family, what were they thinking on that plane when they were just about ready to hit this building? Isn't that horrible? Nightmare? Oh my God.
This native New Yorker watched in disbelief.
And I've lived through blackouts, I've lived through subway strikes, I've lived through all kinds of minor things, race riots of the 60s, and this is, you know, just sort of dumbfounding.
Scores of workers in downtown Minneapolis crowded onto buses. With multiple buildings closing, many couldn't get to the safety of home fast enough. But safety suddenly seems elusive.
We don't know what else is even going to unfold. Can you imagine we all went to bed last night to wake up to this?
The lunch crowd at Lucille's Kitchen stared at the television with stunned faces.
And you got everything from disbelief to I knew it was coming.
Just looking at it and knowing that a lot of people's lives are gone because of this.
That's all I can say is bad. How did this happen with so many planes crashing?
Often on television, you will hear a reporter in a fit of hyperbole describe something as being a nightmare. But today, person after person that I spoke to actually used that word. And today, it seemed no exaggeration. Reporting live, I'm Kevin Berger.
The city of Minneapolis quickly mobilized its police department today, and Caroline Lowe is just back from a briefing at City Hall. Caroline?
Minneapolis officials spent the day mapping out emergency plans. They report that there were 4 bomb threats today, but things were relatively calm here, and they urge people not to overreact. Police visibility will remain very strong in the next couple of days, so you can expect to have your purse searched or your bag checked if you visit City Hall. Patrols will also be beefed up in neighborhoods. Police are concerned that there could be ethnic clashes as more is learned about the identity of the terrorists. Trucks and vans parked at curbs will also be checked throughout the evening downtown. That was the case all day outside of City Hall. There was about a 40% increase in 911 calls to the Minneapolis Communications Center. Most were from people just asking questions, wanting general information. Police again urge people to be on the alert for anything suspicious and to call 911. Reporting live from the newsroom, I'm Caroline Lowe.
One of the first buildings to close in the Twin Cities was the Mall of America, considered by many a possible terrorist target because of the huge number of shoppers there each day. This sign on 35W told everyone the most popular tourist destination in the state was closed. Our team coverage continues with Noelle Walker outside of the Mall of America. Noelle, that parking lot you're standing in is usually full, overflowing this time of day.
Yeah, it usually is, because the Mall of America has on average about 100,000 visitors a day. Today, the only activity we've seen in this parking lot, and they're not even back there right now, are a few Metro Transit buses dropping people off, and not very many people at that. They must have gotten the news that the mall is closed, and it is closed both out of respect for the victims and out of an abundance of caution.
To come up here and secure the door.
The Mall of America welcomes 100,000 people a day from around the world. Today, it's pushing them all away.
Everybody go over to the east lot. I'm trying to see if I can go home or what.
There are barricades, police, and security officers at every entrance. The state's biggest tourist attraction closed for the day without ever opening.
This, again, is a precautionary step. We have no reason to believe that we're a target.
Once the Second World Trade Building collapsed, then they said it was closed and told us to go immediately.
At 9:30, employees and a few early shoppers evacuated the mall.
It's not a political building, but it's an American building.
It's very unnerving, I think, you know, to realize that our country is, you know, in this situation. It's very vulnerable. Yeah, very vulnerable. And what can we do?
There are no answers, but shopping seems trivial on a day like this.
Our thoughts and prayers are with the families, the victims, and the entire nation today.
Now, this is the second time this year the Mall of America has been closed. The first time was a few months ago. You might recall there was a search for a fugitive by the name of Anthony Zappa. Now, the mall closed that time at the police request. This time, this was voluntary. The mall closed on its own, again, out of an abundance of caution and out of respect for the victims. They do plan to be open tomorrow morning. Live at the Mall of America, I'm Noelle Walker.
Another beacon of Twin Cities commerce went dark today when 3,500 tenants of the IDS Center were evacuated. At 51 stories, the IDS is the tallest skyscraper on the Minneapolis skyline. And because of that, building management decided to take a cautious approach and shut down early. IDS management says that other property managers were waiting to see what IDS did, and as soon as it closed, other buildings quickly followed.
A few schools closed today. Most of them stayed open. Extra safety precautions were taken. And as Darcy Paulin shows us, no school administrators were more concerned than those in downtown Minneapolis.
I was just thinking, oh God, the world's coming to an end right now. What's going on?
Students at the Interdistrict Downtown School in Minneapolis reacted much the same way most of the country did when they saw the horrifying images unfold before their eyes.
To actually see the plane hit the building and to see the building come down and with thousands of people in it, you know, innocent lives taken, I couldn't say nothing. I wanted to cry right there on the spot.
Safety concerns were heightened here since the school is located right in the heart of downtown.
It passed through my head a couple of times, like, what if, you know, our building gets hit or something like that, because they was evacuating at the IDS building.
Administrators here and at most other schools plotted a similar course of action.
And we're going to have our kids in the school. We can't send kids home to homes that don't have parents in them. It just doesn't work that way.
Locked doors were closely monitored and staff was in close contact with police in the building.
Despite the safety assurances, more than 100 children from the 3 downtown schools were picked up by their parents today as a safety precaution.
Other parents felt the need to check on their kids.
I felt that they were safe. I just wanted peace of mind, so I came down here just to check.
Meantime, students tried to sort through their emotions.
I've never been through nothing like this, never seen it, don't know how to react to it.
There's a lot of things that's going to change. People aren't going to be the same. A lot of things are going to change.
That's Darcy Pollin's report. The 3 downtown schools do have different emergency evacuation measures in place. Fortunately, they were not needed today.
And given the age of the child, they will have different reactions to this tragedy. So how can you help? The president of the National Institute on Media and the Family says for all ages, it's important to acknowledge their fear while reassuring them.
To acknowledge that fear for them, not try to talk them out of it, not try to say, well, nothing like this is, you know, to acknowledge that, yes, this really is scary, at the same time providing them a lot of reassurance, you know, that adults will make their world safe, that adults will try to figure out how this happens so that it won't happen again.
Dr. David Walsh also advises managing media coverage according to your child's age.
The Minnesota Air National Guard base next to the airport sealed up tight as a drum on its highest state of alert tonight. Security men with M16s strapped to their backs helped search every car entering the facility today. Early this afternoon, the air base went to ThreatCon Delta. That is the highest of 4 levels of security in the military. Security used mirrors to check underneath cars for bombs, and they also searched trunks for explosives. While security has been tightened, the National Guardsmen in Minnesota have not been called up. The military, no doubt, will play some role in the bringing of the people responsible for this attack to justice. Earlier, I spoke with retired Air Force General Doyle Larson and former Assistant U.S. Attorney Bill Michael about balancing the military and legal response.
We don't go out and just on our own assassinate individuals that we believe are responsible. And so I think a measured response by this country is important, considering who all is not only responsible, but the ultimate result that's going to come about from that response.
We're an open society, and so if you start reading my mail, I get really upset about it. But on the other hand, if there's a legitimate need to monitor somebody who has a potential threat to us, we have proper procedures to get authority to put a bug on their phone or monitor their email, and we've got to start doing that more aggressively.
This is the equivalent of war to former United States Vice President Walter Mondale. While he says he never thought he'd see anything like this, he says we must remain calm.
One of the things we've got to remember is that we're a free nation. We're an open society. One of our great strengths has always been that we persevere in freedom despite adversity. And one of the challenges here is going to deal harshly with these kinds of problems while yet retaining our openness and our freedom.
Mr. Mondale says once we find out who is responsible for the attacks, we must go at them with, quote, everything we got.
Some who found themselves in the midst of the terror have relatives in the Twin Cities area. David Schechter reports on the ripple of fear that spread through one apartment in Brooklyn Center and the rest of Minnesota.
Well, you know, I'm glad everything is fine. God, you know, this is unbelievable.
Jawad Ben Garmika.
People are crazy. Yeah, I love you. Bye.
Had a close one.
Bye-bye. Crying. She's in shock. Yeah, she's going home to rest.
His sister, Amali, works in a deli across the street from the World Trade Center. Debris showered her sidewalk and trapped her in the store.
My first thing was like, oh my God, my sister.
In the Muslim culture, just before someone is about to die, they'll often say, I want to make peace with you. Well, that is exactly what Jawad's sister said to him on the phone this morning. She thought she was going to die.
She said, you know, I mean, forgive me, brother, if I did something bad to you. I mean, you know, she thought she was going to die.
But she's fine, unlike so many others. Just one more thing for Jawad to remember.
My God.
On a day that he and we will never forget. David Schechter, WCCO 4 News.
Jawad, who's Moroccan, says that his sister was almost immediately harassed because she's Arabic. And he, like many, urged caution in pointing fingers at people simply because of where they were born.
Air traffic controllers in Minnesota are on heightened alert tonight, a condition known as CCON Charlie. That means control crews are under FAA orders not to leave their radar screens or the facilities they work in until they are cleared to do so. One Minnesota air traffic controller we spoke with in Farmington tells us that although the crisis is placing extra stress on his fellow controllers, it pales in comparison to what their peers in New York experienced today.
I can't even imagine the trauma that the potential trauma that the controller is going through right now. A feeling of helplessness, disbelief, horror. Those would probably be the three adjectives that I would use. It's just sadness.
And one of the reasons for all of that, Craig Bainey says it's possible that New York air traffic controllers were aware that the planes that struck the World Trade Center towers were hijacked and tried to divert them, but that their attempts to communicate with the aircraft were ignored.
Prayer vigils are taking place all over the state tonight. Our team coverage continues at the Basilica of St. Mary. Rick Fuentes is there.
Amelia, believers of many faiths have come to St. Mary's for a special service. I don't want to try and compete with the service going on, but as you can see, it is a packed house. Not a seat is available right here, and people are still coming in. In fact, people here at the Basilica tell us that they've been busy all day, people coming in to reflect. This is a special service, a very unique. We've been enjoying some Hebrew Psalms being read by visiting rabbis. Later, we will hear a homily read by Father Gillespie here of St. Mary's, and then we will hear a Jewish prayer for the dead before the end of the service. Many people, of course, gathering here to try and look for some answers on this very difficult day and to comfort each other on this day that a lot of people will not be able to forget. Reporting live in Minneapolis, I'm Rick Fuentes.
Thanks, Rick. A way you can help the people suffering out east is to give blood. The response has been overwhelming at the Memorial Blood Center of Minneapolis today. The line to give went out into the parking lot. Donors didn't mind standing in line for hours. Another way you can help is donate money to the American Red Cross. You can call our phone bank at 612-330-2764 to make your charge donation over the phone. These volunteers will be on hand all evening. They will also have information about where you can donate blood.
Lost in the horror of the terrorist attacks is the fact that this is a big primary election day in both Minneapolis and St. Paul. In the aftermath of the attacks, there was a downturn in turnout, but now the numbers of voters are picking back up. And Esme Murphy joins us with the latest.
Well, as you can probably tell behind me, turnout at this precinct and precincts across Minneapolis and St. Paul is actually picking up. It's important to remember that polling places in Minneapolis and St. Paul are open until 8 o'clock. At first, many local voters seemed paralyzed by the horrible news from the East Coast. But many voters we spoke with say they were inspired by today's terrible events to come out and exercise their right to vote. At this Highland Park polling place in St. Paul, workers, like everyone else, were riveted by the horror.
One might presume that they are flying combat air patrol over Manhattan.
Many voters told us the attacks made them more determined.
It's a reminder what happened today of how important freedom is and how important the vote is for people to take the liberties seriously.
Even before the East Coast terrorist attacks, the voter projections for turnout for both Minneapolis and St. Paul is that there'd be very few voters casting ballots, that there'd be about 40,000 people casting ballots in Minneapolis, maybe as few as 30,000 in St. Paul. Turnout before the disaster was brisk. Among those voting early, Minneapolis mayoral candidates R.T. Ryback and Lisa McDonald. And in St. Paul, mayoral candidates Jay Beninoff and Randy Kelly. But then, at mid-morning, in the aftermath of the crisis, voting slowed. Mayor Sharon Sayles Belton, voting at midday, urged everyone to get out and still cast their ballot.
In the city of Minneapolis and elsewhere across the country, we're going to maintain our calm, and we're going to conduct the nation's business.
And as people started trickling back to the polls, many expressed an emotional commitment to vote.
This is my way of saying, I'm an American. I want to do what's right for my country.
Our country is a melting pot based on, you know, a wonderful democracy. I can't say how proud I am.
Obviously, many voters very emotional in the wake of the terrible events, but clearly our democratic process is continuing. It is not clear right now how today's events will affect the outcome of this election and also the turnout, which is considered critical to that outcome. Reporting live from Bryn Mawr Elementary, I'm Esme Murphy.
Today's news extends beyond urban centers, goes throughout the country, of course. As Joe Kurkowski from our sister station KCCO in Alexandria tells us, rural Minnesota is equally shocked.
As the world reacts to today's attack on America, rural Minnesota is also feeling the pain. In Alexandria this morning, businesses and classes stood still as the day's events unfolded in front of them. Students and their teachers tried to put it all into perspective.
So it is a heck of a lot worse in Oklahoma.
Across town, the mother of two daughters on the East Coast, one in New York, the other in Washington, D.C., tried to remain calm.
When we took Laura to school about a month ago, I did have the thought that I now have my two daughters in probably the two most powerful and vulnerable cities in the world.
Miles away, across the river from the Pentagon, Laura watched history being made safe and sound on the campus of Georgetown University.
The scariest part about all this is that we're directly in the flight line of where the plane had to have flown in from, so it appears that the plane would have had to fly right over our campus.
Many churches in greater Minnesota have prayer services planned for tonight. This afternoon, Alexandria's faith community gathered to plan an ecumenical service for later this week to pray for peace, not only on the East Coast, but all over our nation. In Alexandria, Joe Kurkowski, WCCO News.
Joe says a viewer from Bemidji asked the question, what number do you call in an emergency? 911? And he followed with what is today's date? 9/11. He says it's something to think about. Time now to check with Paul Douglas. Take a break from all of this bad news and get back to the reality that tomorrow, one of the things we need to know in context is, in all likelihood, as bad as things are, the sun comes up tomorrow.
It does. It does. All right, let's check our forecast here. It looks pretty quiet here. In fact, right through the end of the week, there are no big storms looming. Mercifully, the weather is going to be an afterthought right through the weekend. A couple of light spotty showers, but it looks like this next cool front is going to come through dry tonight. And here is the forecast overnight. Partly cloudy skies. We peaked at 82 this afternoon. By morning, we're looking for a low temperature dropping down fairly significantly down to about 57. 72 tomorrow, partly cloudy skies. And then a cooling trend as the week goes on. Light jacket weather returns Friday and Saturday. The next chance of showers along about Saturday, but no big storms in sight. Like many of the viewers watching, I keep hoping that I'll wake up. That this is just all a bad dream.
Barb called and said that, my wife called and said that she was taking our youngest daughter Della over to the Memorial Blood Center and give blood. She said, felt like there was something, at least something you can do. That you can do. Absolutely. And the response has been just overwhelming. You know, people around here are always the biggest givers when it comes to calls around the nation for blood donations. And the lines went around the block there at the Memorial Blood Center, Minneapolis and St. Paul today. The lines are out the doors. We've got a line set up down here for you, 612-330-2764.
you want to make your charge donation over the phone, that's the number to call. And we want to let you know that these volunteers will be on hand all evening, and they will also have information about where you can donate blood if that's what you'd like to do. That phone number again, at the phone bank, is 612-330-2764. That's the American Red Cross if you'd like to make a charge donation over the phone or find out where you can donate blood.
Everybody's been asking about the casualty numbers. There's no way to possibly know it. There were 50,000 people inside that building, and we hope most of them got out. The numbers could be 10,000, 20,000, so they're going to need blood for a long time. We'll see you back here tonight at 10.
Continuing now our live CBS Evening News coverage of the attack on America from CBS News World Headquarters in New York. 4 commercial jets hijacked and deliberately crashed today. 3 of them hit buildings, 2 the World Trade Center Twin Towers. A 3rd hit the Pentagon. The 4th hijacked airliner went down in southwestern Pennsylvania. New York's towering World Trade Center reduced to rubble. The Pentagon smashed and smoking. Uncounted